Mansbridge, and this is a special edition of The National from Washington. The day before his inauguration, crowds gather to celebrate and demonstrate.
Because we're going to keep on fighting.
He's made a long list of so-called day one priorities.
Problem with this promise, though, is
Lindsay Duncombe looks at what's realistic and what makes Donald Trump Donald Trump.
He wanted to be popular, incredibly successful and rich, and really glamorous.
We go back to his not-so-humble beginnings. This city, always buzzing, is in a full frenzy tonight. We're on the terrace of the Canadian Embassy overlooking Pennsylvania Avenue, a beautiful view of Capitol Hill and everything that comes with the tradition here of a peaceful transition of power. There is a palpable feeling of anticipation, tinged with apprehension.
Building Trump's first wall.
This was the day all the barriers and bleachers needed to be up. 800,000 people are expected to be here, trying for a glimpse of Donald Trump's swearing in.
I believe he's going to do the right thing. He's going to do what he believes is right, not just not have the country so divided along party lines.
I think a lot of his programs will really pay big dividends.
Others fear them. Including these LGBTQ activists who danced last night outside the home of the next vice president.
I'm nervous that in the next 48 hours we are going to start to see monumental change for the bad. And
a country divided in transition. So let's get things started with our Paul Hunter. He's here in Washington. Paul.
Peter, this is it. Donald Trump isn't quite yet the president, but when he stepped off the plane in D.C. today, he seemed to signal he knows his moment has arrived. Now less than a day from taking the oath of office, and President-elect Donald Trump knows the drill. At the bottom of the steps, a presidential salute. It would be a whirlwind day for Trump, whisked through the U.S. Capitol as he prepares to take on the most powerful job on earth. First stop, not far from the White House, at, yes, the Trump Hotel. Inside, he told a crowd of fellow Republicans, as he does, what a team he's assembled.
We have by far the highest IQ of any cabinet ever assembled.
But even as his cabinet picks continue their nomination hearings, critics underline it's one of the least diverse cabinets in years. Mostly white, mostly male.
The number one thing that I think Americans should focus on is he hiring the best and the brightest? Is he hiring people who are committed to enacting real change?
Change will no doubt be a key theme in his inaugural address. Seen here, as tweeted by Trump yesterday, pen in hand, the speech is said to be brief and philosophical. But Trump, who today laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier and later attended an inaugural concert at the Lincoln Memorial, takes office with record-low approval ratings while labeled a xenophobic, ill-prepared, fear-mongering liar who won the election aided by Russia while being outvoted.
God bless the USA.
But tens of millions of Americans did vote for Trump, and it's his vision of America they now embrace and await. By this time tomorrow, he'll be running the place, and all the promises he's made, they expect him to fulfill. Tonight, to a partisan crowd and a bitterly divided country, Trump pledged unity.
We're going to make America great for all of our people, everybody throughout our country. That includes the inner cities, that includes everybody. And the crowd cheered. Tomorrow, hundreds of thousands will turn out to celebrate Donald Trump, but equally there will be countless vehemently opposing him. Demonstrations against Donald Trump are planned not just for here, but in all 50 states. Quite a start, Peter, for the new president.
All right, Paul, thank you. The main focus tomorrow will be on that big stage back there, the National Mall, Pennsylvania Avenue. But just a couple of blocks away, there's another landmark, Washington property, that's also drawing a lot of attention. And that's dividing opinion, too. Adrian Arsenault explains.
This high-octane spectacle unfolding in Washington is being greeted by the likes of those who drove 19 hours to get here with flat-out giddiness.
They were right in front of us. We were shocked, astounded, happy. Yeah.
Repeatedly today, people said this experience was a first for them. D.C. is new, politics are new, and new is what they voted for.
And we need to get rid of the politicians and get actual businessmen that know how to run things. So tremendous opportunity, and we got to see the president-elect. Big deal.
What else is new is the place they were drawn to. Not seats of traditional power, but the Trump Hotel, perfectly positioned along the inaugural route. There's no mistaking its sudden influence. Trump himself showing up last night and today full of shameless pride.
20% under budget.
His press secretary not even pretending to distance the president-elect from the business.
Stunning hotel. I encourage you to go there if you haven't been by.
No argument, it is beautiful. Its gilded corners a draw more than ever for diplomats, lobbyists, and the angry. A man appeared to try to set himself alight there this week. Police agencies worry it's a new target. All the Trump properties are, and ethicists are in knots. The government owns the land, so Trump is landlord and tenant. There are liens against it brought by workers who say they weren't paid, and conflicts it represents are not yet resolved. Many in D.C. won't let this go. But that's all just noise to Trump supporters.
This property to me represents what he's going to try to do with the government. This languished under government supervision for years and years. They tried 4 or 5 different ways to do it. I'm sure they wasted tens of millions of dollars. He took it over. He brought it in under budget, under time, and it's beautiful. That's what he's going to try to do with this government.
For all the love that lurks outside the hotel right now, the some 28,000 law enforcement personnel who will guard the inauguration are acutely aware divisions are real. There's every expectation they'll be on full display tomorrow.
So expect to see a lot of might. Don't forget to look up. There will be 5 military flyovers tomorrow, F-16s, Blackhawks. There hasn't been a military flyover at an inauguration ceremony in some 70 years. Maybe U.S. presidents didn't like the optics of it, but Donald Trump has been very open about saying he wants this country to show off its military muscle. As everyone here keeps saying, this is a new day. Peter?
All right, Adrian, thank you. Well, Keith Bogue is, of course, here in Washington as well, watching and reporting on this story. You just walked 6 blocks from the Bureau to this spot to talk to us, and you kind of watched the story unfold as you were walking along.
Yeah, 8 blocks, actually. I was coming from our Bureau, which is in the National Press Building, which is tonight the site of something called the Deplorable. It's a pre-inauguration ball, but the Deplora part is a play on the word that Hillary Clinton used to describe what she thought were the xenophobes and racists and white supremacists that were attaching themselves to the Trump campaign. She called them a basket of deplorables. Well, their ball tonight has become a controversial event here in Washington because it does have some associations with what's called the alt-right, which some say is synonymous with white nationalist movements. And so there are protests outside the National Press Building, but I walked 8 blocks, and there was some kind of protest activity and police all along every one of those 8 blocks tonight.
Well, as Adrian said, too, we'll be watching that unfold perhaps tomorrow as well, that kind of activity. The other focus tomorrow, for at least half the day, is going to be watching another president leave, and that's Barack Obama, and it's going to be interesting to watch him.
Yeah, I think from simply a human point of view, there's an element of tragedy to what we're going to see tomorrow. Let's remember that Donald Trump built his political career on a hoax about Barack Obama, the hoax of birtherism that said he hadn't been born in the United States and was really an illegitimate president. And Barack Obama now has to sit in front of the Capitol building and watch the man who didn't create this hoax, but who perpetuated this hoax against him year after year after year, take the oath of office, and then presumably rise up into the arms of history.
All right. Keith, thanks very much. Keith will be back a little later. Well, on his last full day in office, Barack Obama set a new record for the number of commutations issued by a president. Today, Obama shortened the sentences of 330 federal inmates. That's the most in a single day. And it brings his total to more than 1,700. That's more than any other president, and includes 568 so-called lifers freed after being given a life sentence. And the White House also announced 4 more transfers out of Guantanamo Bay. That leaves 41 detainees still held there. When Obama came to office, there were 240. He pledged to close the prison, but couldn't get the necessary approval from Congress. Almost 63 million Americans voted for Donald Trump, but nearly 66 million voted for his opponent. As we've seen, many of those voters are not prepared to accept a Trump presidency. Tonight in New York City, Trump's hometown, opponents are out in force. Our Stephen D'Souza joins us now. Stephen.
Peter, a star-studded lineup took to the stage in the shadow of New York's Trump Hotel to voice their opposition to the president-elect. Among the actors who spoke on the stage tonight, Alec Baldwin and Robert De Niro. You'll recall that Robert De Niro, during the election campaign, had some choice words for Donald Trump, including, among other things, calling him a pig. Well, tonight, he called on New Yorkers to stand up to Donald Trump.
We New Yorkers, we patriots will stand united for our rights and the rights of our fellow citizens.
The crowd here numbered in the thousands, stretching back 6 or 7 city blocks. Filmmaker Michael Moore also spoke, and he gave the crowd a phone number, encouraging them to call their congressman or congresswoman to voice their displeasure over Trump's cabinet picks. Now, more protests are expected tomorrow in front of Trump's home on Fifth Avenue to coincide with the inauguration. But the biggest crowd is expected on Saturday. It's tens of thousands will take to the streets to march in solidarity with the Women's March taking place at the same time in Washington, D.C. Peter.
All right, Stephen, thank you. Coming up, who is Donald Trump?
His confidence is so great that there's no challenge that frightens him.
And what drives the man who's about to become president? Well, we'll have more from Washington soon, but first, look at the day's other top stories. Starting in central Italy, where a massive avalanche has destroyed a luxury hotel. The search is on for survivors at the devastated resort in the mountainous Abruzzo region. The avalanche hit with incredible force yesterday after a string of earthquakes in the area. More than 30 people were believed to be inside. Thomas Daglin now on the desperate race to find them.
From up high, it's hard to imagine the Hotel Rigo Piano stood 4 stories and looked more like this just yesterday. A 4-star spa retreat now destroyed. The force of the avalanche pushing the building down the mountain a full 10 meters.
Aiuto, aiuto, aiuto.
Help, help, help. That's what this man's friend pleaded for when he called him from the devastated hotel. At first, he says authorities refused to believe anything was wrong. It took hours for help to arrive. Rescuers skied through a blizzard in the dark of night, then dug and dug for the 30 people believed to be missing. We are holding our breath, said Prime Minister Paolo Gentiloni. Once inside, crews found collapsed walls, hallways filled with snow, linens eerily still stacked. Nearby, relatives frantically asked for news of those trapped. They're extracting them from the hotel and bringing them to hospitals, I think, but I don't know because it's impossible for us to go up, she says. This man trying to reassure a loved one by text. Back at the hotel, one survivor managed to walk away with a bit of help and visibly shaken. With daylight, trucks lined up, crews waiting for the plow to clear snowbanks as tall as the rescuers.
In the past, we found people after 3 days.
He may still have hope, but the task isn't getting easier. Thomas Daglin, CBC News, London.
A rescue effort in Tehran turned into a disaster today, right on live television. Firefighters were trying to save a historic high-rise when it collapsed on top of them. Tehran's mayor says at least 20 firefighters are dead. Dozens of others were injured, including bystanders. The building's tenants had already been moved to safety. And the drive to reach 7 miners trapped deep underground in Peru stalled again today because of heavy rain and mechanical breakdowns. They've been stranded hundreds of meters down since a landslide on Monday. It's not known how many survived. It's a vital database used by Canadian police to protect public safety. But for 12 hours today, officers and border guards were on the job without it. A major computer outage took the Canadian Police Information Centre system offline. The CBC's Alison Crawford has been working this story for us. Alison.
Peter, CPIC was down until about noon Eastern time today, meaning police across Canada had no access to a critical computer database. It provides frontline officers with warnings, information about arrest warrants. It also allows police to run searches on license plates and conduct criminal record checks. One RCMP member said working last night was like flying blind. CBC News agreed not to report on the major computer network failure until it was over, so the public would not be aware that frontline police had been at a disadvantage. The federal government's embattled tech support agency Shared Services Canada said the outage happened when the routers supporting core IT networks and applications failed. But CBC News has learned there have been more than a dozen unforeseen CPIC outages since last spring. And the RCMP, which administers CPIC, has long complained about the IT support they're getting from Shared Services Canada. Peter?
All right, Alison, thank you. Indigenous leaders were in Ottawa today pushing for a national suicide prevention strategy. The call for action comes after the suicides of 2 12-year-old girls on a remote Northern Ontario First Nation earlier this month.
The system is handcuffing and discriminating against our people. The culture has to change. When is enough?
Last summer, the Wapika First Nation feared a suicide pact might be taking shape and requested help from the federal government. Health Canada said there was no funding available at the time. Now it's trying to find it. A disturbing video posted online has caught the attention of Canadian animal welfare authorities. It was reportedly filmed on the set of a Hollywood movie. The CBC's Cameron McIntosh reports.
Oh, here he goes. Oh, no.
The video was posted by TMZ. In it, a dog appears to be forced into a tank of fast-running water, against its will. The video contains edits, but here the dog appears to struggle as its head goes under. The circumstances around the shoot are unclear.
Oh, here it goes.
There, next to his leg.
It's enough to raise red flags with this dog trainer who works in films.
When I watched the video initially, it made me sick.
This was me, and then this was me.
The shoot is purportedly for the soon-to-be-released film A Dog's Purpose, the story of a dog who lives multiple lives. It was shot in Manitoba in 2015 and produced by Amblin Entertainment, which says it's investigating, but also insists no harm came to the dog. The film's director tweeted he wasn't on the set and that he's disturbed by this. Gavin Pallone was a producer on the film.
I don't think that what you see edited together fully reflects everything that happened. I still don't care, because I don't want to see an animal coerced.
Timing is an issue here too. Rather than be reported right away, it's coming out 15 months later as the film is being released. Hollywood and animal rights groups have long battled over the use of animals in films. Animal Justice has filed a formal complaint.
We urge everyone to avoid this film and all other films that still use live animals.
Do I think that all animals should be CGI'd? I don't think so. Do I think that they need to regulate the industry better? 100%.
Now, jurisdiction for all this falls under Manitoba's chief veterinary officer, who confirms that a complaint has been received and will be looked into. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, straight ahead, what drives Donald Trump? And what could it tell us about how he will govern? We'll be back with The National in Washington.
comes off as being very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Arrogant?
Yeah, he's arrogant.
I like him. Man's got it made, got everything.
I sort of love and hate him at the same time. I mean, I think he has, a monumental ego.
Donald Trump has been polarizing public opinion for decades. And now the man who preached the art of the deal is about to become deal maker in chief. What are some of the forces that have shaped his ambition? What makes Donald tick?
The main thing that drives Donald Trump is the pursuit of fame.
I don't think Donald Trump has changed since he was about 7 years old.
Born in 1946, Donald Trump grew up in a posh suburb of Queens, New York, just across the East River from Manhattan. They lived in luxury. He was the fourth of 5 children born to wealthy real estate developer Fred Trump and his wife Mary. But Trump Sr. was tough. He saw life as a competition. You were either a winner or a loser. Among the 5 little Trumps, only Donald showed any passion for the family business. And as a young teen, he was so rough and wild that his parents sent him to an all-boy military academy.
I think it was the formative moment in his life. His character was set by this experience. The one vestige of it you can see is in his posture. For a 70-year-old guy, he stands up nice and straight, and he looks you in the eye, and he does have a certain commanding presence.
Trump seemed to revel in the masculine culture of competition. He was praised for his athleticism, and in senior year, crowned ladies' man by his classmates. Then came college and the world-renowned Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. By the early 1970s, he was headed to Manhattan to do something his father never could: break into downtown real estate. He found a mentor in Roy Cohn, a lawyer known to be ruthless. Cohn came to prominence in the 1950s during the McCarthy hearings as the communist-baiting senator's chief counsel. When Trump and his father were sued by the U.S. government for discriminating against tenants based on their race, it was Cohn who taught him how to hit back, to use lawsuits to counterpunch. The case was settled in 1975, without Trump admitting any wrongdoing.
When you see Trump pressing his case and doubling down on extreme statements, that's Roy Cohn's voice you hear in the background.
Meanwhile, Trump looked to leave his mark in real estate. In 1979, he snapped up a Fifth Avenue site and built Trump Tower, an opulent high-rise which would become the flagship of his growing organization.
Suddenly there was this young developer who had taken a risk and engineered the development of a very high-profile and for him lucrative skyscraper project that symbolized New York coming back. And at that moment in time, Trump had everything at his feet.
He turned the top 3 floors into his home. By now, he had a wife, Ivana, a former model, and a family. He believed his skills as a negotiator could be translated into any business, and he started to expand out of the familiar world of real estate into hotels, casinos, and a piece of Eastern Airlines to turn into a shuttle.
What I want to do is run it as a diamond, an absolute diamond.
Donald Trump flaunted his wealth. He bought an 86-meter yacht and the 118-room Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida. His celebrity grew, and he loved it.
He wanted to be popular, but he also wanted to be regarded as incredibly successful and rich and really glamorous.
You've said that if you did run for president, you believe you'd win.
Well, I don't know. I think I'd win. I tell you what, I wouldn't go in to lose. I've never gone in to lose in my life.
And he began to insert himself into public issues and politics. He had fame and success, but in the early 1990s, there were rumors about his marriage.
Miss Marla Maples, a beautiful girl from Dalton, Georgia.
There was a new woman on the scene, Marla Maples, nicknamed the Georgia Peach. The tabloids went mad.
And I can't control media. Nobody controls the media.
He needs the media. Donald Trump alternately scorns the media and cultivates the media because he loves the media.
There was more serious trouble on another front. Atlantic City's Taj Mahal, the biggest casino in the world, and costing Trump more than $1 billion to build, was failing. With the economy in a recession, other properties, his shuttle, were all bleeding money. It would take a massive infusion of loans, bankruptcies, and a total reorganization to keep the Trump business from collapsing. But he would emerge with the most valuable asset of all, his name.
And the Trump who emerged from that was essentially a human shingle.
The Trump brand became his new focus.
A big and tasty for just $1? How do you do it? What's your secret?
May I have the last slice?
Actually, you're only entitled to half.
Play Trump, the game from Milton Bradley.
I think you'll like it.
Donald!
And there seemed to be nothing he wouldn't endorse.
Hey, look at this! Donald Trump! The hostile takeover of Donald Trump!
Then, in 2004, reality hit. For 14 seasons, millions of Americans watched a carefully crafted Donald Trump act, well, presidential. He'd toyed with the idea of running before, but by 2011, he started thinking about it more seriously.
Take the down elevator. You're fired.
His confidence is so great that there's no challenge that frightens him.
He was wealthy again, his reputation had been rehabilitated, and he seized on an issue that would vault him back into the news. The birther movement, a fringe group that believed Barack Obama was not born in the United States and therefore ineligible to be president. It was an attack many saw as racist. To silence the doubters,
yes, in fact, I was born in Hawaii.
Obama would have to release his long-form birth certificate. Trump wasn't satisfied.
Now, we have to look at it. We have to see, is it real? Is it proper?
Donald Trump is here tonight.
But the president wasn't done. At the 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner, he took direct aim at Donald Trump.
But no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac?
Trump has this absolute dread fear of being humiliated. I do believe that on the night of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, when President Obama mocked and really shamed Donald Trump for a good 5 or 10 minutes, Trump decided, I'm going to run for president.
Donald Trump, you can't hide. He can see your racist side.
He would spend the next 4 years laying the groundwork. And on June 16, 2015, with his third wife, Melania, at his side, Donald Trump made it official.
I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
The billionaire, the braggart, the outsider. Donald Trump would go on to score the most shocking upset in political history. Tomorrow, he will be sworn in as the 45th President of the United States. Well, that gives you a sense of what makes Donald Trump tick. Joining us now, Jennifer Carroll, a former Lieutenant Governor of Florida and Trump's point person in her state in Florida during the campaign, a key state and a key victory for Donald Trump.
Yes, it was.
So you saw him pretty well close up. You got to know him fairly well. What would you describe as his key strength?
His strength is being able to communicate to the average person. Although he's a millionaire, a lot of the voters, particularly in Florida, and we saw some of the states that were key states to the battleground states, that those people saw that he connected with them, which was Hillary Clinton's problem in connecting to the people. Mitt Romney, when he ran, as a millionaire, could not connect to the people the same way.
All right. What about the flip side? What you saw him close up. So what's the big weakness?
His mouth and his lack of restraint sometimes. And we've seen that with a number of the Twitter storms that have gone through and the media capitalizing on him tweeting at 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes, particularly now that he is going to be sworn in as president, he may have to throttle that back a little bit and not tweet so fast.
Well, what amazes me about that part of him is that I'm sure the people around him, and I don't know, maybe you do as well, were saying, hey, you know, you don't do that.
True, but he, like everyone said during the campaign, Donald is going to do what Donald wants to do. You can't tell him what not to do, because if he feels that he needs to defend himself, he's going to go forth and do that. But in this climate, particularly how landmines could be laid to trap you, you really have, as president now, you have to watch what you say, because everything will be taken as literal, and therefore you may engage into a battle you don't want to engage in.
Choppers above us a lot, and they will be all through tomorrow as well. Tomorrow, the key part, obviously, is the speech.
Yes.
What does he have to do in that speech?
Well, we've seen since the campaign and after the election was over with, a contentious divide in this country. And the people who did not vote and support Donald Trump continue to say he's illegitimate and that he's not going to be their president. We have 60 members of the Congress that will not be there for the inauguration. So therefore, he has to bring us a message of unity, to say that now it's an inauguration, and inauguration is about unifying people of a newness, of a vision to bring folks together. So he needs to bring that unity in his speech, as well as encapsulate his message as to how he's going to better this country. A lot of people are hurting, losing jobs, and that's what they elected him to do, is change things around. And I think we're going to see a personal side of him as well, that he's going to probably bring in his father and his experience with his father and how it molded him to be the man that he is today, and his children. He's very proud of them for what they've accomplished and how they make him look really good.
That's a long speech. Jennifer's going to be with us tomorrow to help on our commentary throughout our broadcast tomorrow. Well, we'll have a different view from a familiar face when we come back. Plus,
Donald Trump promised to kill it on day one.
From NAFTA to immigration to the Keystone Pipeline, what promises can Donald Trump actually move on right away? Still lots ahead on The National in Washington. While covering the political rise of Donald Trump, we've relied on the insights of David Frum on several occasions. He's a senior editor at The Atlantic magazine, a former speechwriter for George W. Bush. We spoke to him earlier. So while we're focused on Capitol Hill, all the action there, there's this elaborate dance going on inside the White House of the old team moving out and the new team moving in.
Right. That applies both to the living quarters of the president, where during the course of the ceremony, one family moves out, another family moves in, but also to the business end of the White House, where staff are replaced. Remember, unlike the cabinet, who have to be confirmed by the Senate, as do the assistant secretaries and the undersecretaries, the people in the White House are appointed by the president. There's no Senate confirmation. They can go to work right away.
So they're literally finding their desks and getting organized on the day of the inauguration?
Well, what you hope is they know where the desks are already.
What's that first week like?
Because of the slowness of the confirmation process, the first weeks do feel a little bit like summer school. The halls are empty, and that is even more true when you're dealing with your non-White House counterparts in the cabinets, because the cabinet slots are only just beginning to fill up. Trump will have had, of course, more time than George Bush. Because of the recount, his transition was cut almost by half, a little more than half. Donald Trump has had 3 months to get ready, but by all indications he hasn't used them well, and that a lot of the presidential appointees are not made, and the National Security Council in particular, one of the central switching points in U.S. government, lags far behind where it should be.
We haven't talked since election night. You were pretty critical leading up to that election of the Trump organization and the Trump team. Have you changed in your opinion at all?
I've become, if possible, more alarmed. All of the questions about the levels of public integrity that you would see in a Trump administration, in case after case after case, the results are even worse than one feared on election night.
You're a Republican. You live in this town. Is there a level of discomfort among Republicans in this town?
Oh, for sure. There are three parties in Washington: the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and the Trump Party. And the relationship between Trump and the Republicans is one that is very tense, especially the national security Republicans. At the same time, he's the president. They need him at the moment more than he needs them. And they're also aware, and this is one of the sources of Donald Trump's power, Donald Trump does not much share Republican ideas, and he has no care for the Republican Party as an institution. It is not impossible to imagine that he might defect and put together his own congressional majority made up of some Democrats and some Republicans. And he hints all the time that that might be something he has in mind. That's the hidden threat within his otherwise kind of puzzling healthcare stance. Because sometimes he's on one side of the question, sometimes he's on the other, and he is signaling to Republicans, I could defect. If I give the Democrats single-payer healthcare, I might be able to govern with a Democratic majority in Congress.
You know, his first duty as president tomorrow, after he gives the oath, is his inaugural address.
Right.
You made your name first in this town as a speechwriter. If you were writing that speech, what would you say?
I would say read the speech and don't improvise, because he always interjects these little things. Look, what you want to do in a speech like that is send a message of unity to the country.
Is he capable of doing that?
He tries. He really does try. But the problem is it's so insincere. The unity message comes not just from the things you say, but from the things you don't say. I mean, you can't send a unity message if 15 minutes before you're tweeting abuse at an icon of the civil rights movement. You have to stop doing those things, and you have to become the president. And that's something that Donald Trump has not done. The first is an indication of unity, and the second is a direction of the thematic direction of your government. You don't tell people what you're going to do, because in a month or 40 days there will be a speech to Congress outlining the legislative program. But you want to give a sense of what are the major themes. George Bush in 2001 made it clear that how much religion mattered to him and how much religious ideas were going to guide him.
I know this was in our reach because we are guided by a power larger than ourselves, who creates us equal in his image.
President Obama's, one of his major themes was one of racial reconciliation and the power of the moment of his swearing in.
This is the meaning of our liberty and our creed, why men and women and children of every race and every faith can join in celebration across this magnificent mall, and why a man whose father less than 60 years ago might not have been served at a local restaurant can now stand before you to take a most sacred oath.
Bill Clinton in 1993 talked a lot about his vision of activist government.
To renew America, we must be bold. We must do what no generation has had to do before. We must invest more in our own people, in their jobs, and in their future, and at the same time, cut our massive debt.
Again, not programmatically, but thematically. The question of that is that ahead for Donald Trump? But he can't unify. I don't think any president, at least in a long time, has come into office with as high a level of resistance among the American public as Donald Trump faces. One of the things that's very hard to absorb in the presidency is how powerful the president's voice is, and second, that his words are deeds. And that is why those tested words that have gone through a process, that are put on a teleprompter, that you have to convince them, that's the real president. And the things you might casually say, the misstatements, that's not real. Donald Trump has made clear with his disdain for that process that what he says in formal settings, that's not the real him. The real him is what you see on Twitter.
Well, maybe we'll see our first 140-character inaugural address.
Look, short is always better.
David, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, next up, our Lindsay Duncombe with a reality check on those day one promises made by Trump. Welcome back to Washington. During the U.S. election campaign, Donald Trump built a tower of promises. He detailed a long list of challenges he wanted to tackle, beginning on day one. Well, it's almost here. So we asked our Lindsay Duncombe to take a look at some of those promises and what can be done right away.
The big one to watch, of course, is Obamacare. Donald Trump promised to kill it on day one, and steps have already been taken to repeal the law. Problem with this promise, though, is Congress doesn't have a plan to replace it. Certainly not one that could be voted on, withstand a filibuster, and end up on Donald Trump's desk for signing into law. This one will take a while. Forget the first day. Donald Trump promised to move on immigration in the first hour of his presidency, vowing to move out undocumented immigrants with criminal records instantly. The problem with this promise? Trump's estimates are way off. There are nowhere near 3 million people fitting that description, and enforcement agencies have already been removing undocumented criminals for years. Add to that, many big city mayors have vowed not to cooperate with immigration enforcement. One thing the president can do, though, is put an immediate end to refugee programs. And on day one, Donald Trump promised to stop accepting refugees from Syria. As for day one promises that affect Canada, trade is a big one. Trump's promise to back out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. No problems here. Many believe the TPP is already dead. He's also promised to reopen NAFTA, and sure, he can say that on day one, but any changes there certainly will take time to negotiate with Canada and Mexico. What about the Keystone Pipeline? Trump may have called moving Canadian oil across the border a day one priority, but there's a problem here too. Trump could reverse Obama's decision, but with oil prices as they are, the most likely scenario is the company will have to submit a new application and start all over again. And the thing is, we don't even really know when Donald Trump's first day on the job will be. The inauguration is on Friday, but he said recently he doesn't plan to get down to work until Monday, the 23rd. An uncertain timeline for an uncertain beginning. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Washington.
Past presidents haven't wasted any time getting down to business. On his first day in office, Jimmy Carter pardoned hundreds of thousands of Vietnam War draft dodgers. George W. Bush blocked federal aid to foreign groups that support abortion. And Barack Obama cracked down on government workers who leave office and become lobbyists. The CBC's Keith Bogue will be back with us in just a few moments. We'll also have a note about tomorrow. But first, today's business numbers. The TSX gained 11 points. The Canadian dollar lost almost a third of a cent. In New York, the Dow fell 72 points, and the price of oil, it was up 29 cents a barrel.
Amy, you don't even have to ask.
On the next Heartland.
I'll be your prenatal partner.
Okay, what do I do?
I got this.
It's all hands on deck.
Done.
Okay, it's not a calf.
Heartland, Sunday at 7 on CBC.
Can we just focus on a fear of flying? I'll be with you every step of the way.
I have not had this kind of fun in ages.
Trust me.
Well, it won't be long now before Donald Trump is sworn into office. Keith Bogue is back with us again. You know, we really have no idea what's going to happen back there in front of the Capitol building tomorrow. But what are you going to be watching for?
Well, we've already heard from a number of people who have said they're looking for any signs and gestures from Donald Trump of unity in the speech. But I think also looking at the crowd and seeing how that crowd behaves. Let's recall easily that it was a very, very violent campaign by normal standards. And a lot of the people on both sides of, let's call it the Trump question, have come here to Washington, some to protest, some to support Donald Trump. But we heard from the Secretary of Homeland Security this morning that he's very concerned about what happens when those two groups get together. Can they play well together?
And that will be a major element of tomorrow. I mean, it was supposed to be inauguration tomorrow, protest Saturday, but they've already been mixing today, hints that they're mixing today. All right, Keith, thank you. Now, about tomorrow. CBC News will bring you every moment of Inauguration Day. There's special coverage on CBC News Network, CBC Television, and online starting at 10 a.m. Eastern. And the National will be right here again tomorrow night. And finally, a lighter moment from Washington today between Texas Governor Rick Perry and Senator Al Franken.
Did you enjoy meeting me? I hope you were as much fun on that dais as you were on your couch.
Oh, my Lord.
Well, I think we found our Saturday Night Live soundbite.
The two cracked up the Senate committee during Perry's confirmation hearing to become Energy Secretary. Perry also said that he regrets once calling for the Energy Department to be disbanded.
Thank you so much for coming.
That's the National from Washington this Thursday night, the eve of Donald Trump's inauguration. For news at any hour, you can always go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm Peter Mansbridge. Thanks for watching.